Okay, I'm going to talk about tables in JMARS. Um, there's some functionality that is not entirely obvious. So on this screen here, you can see we have two different kinds of tables. We have one table here that has this little 3-button ellipsis next to it, next to each column label. And here we have one that doesn't. So the difference is this table down here has some functionality built into it that this one does not. So if I click on this, header up here and do anything with it, it's not really, I guess it does reorder. That's basic Java functionality. If I right click on it, nothing happens. So down here in this table, in this one, we have more added functionality here behind this 3-button ellipsis. So if you click on it, left click on it, you can sort columns and you can see some other options here that I'll go over in a second. Just like the table above, I can click and drag columns to reorder them. And I can also left click anywhere in this area, not on the ellipsis, and order by that column. So it'll order the entire table by that column. So the first click orders, looks like ascending, descending on the second click, and no sorting on the third click. So I can actually do the same functionality with a right click, bring up this context menu. I can sort ascending by this column. Now, an interesting one is if I now right click on a separate column, these options become available, and that allows me to do a secondary sort. So it'll first sort by this one and then sort by this one. In this case, it's not all that useful given that this is that these are colors, but it still is actually doing the sorting. Again, I can reset all the sorting by just right clicking and say no sort. Okay, so show more functionality. I'm actually going to go to the custom map manager and look at this particular table I have here. Now I mostly do test data for custom maps, so this is all test data. But here I have my table, and it's not entirely clear, but there are columns that exist in this table that aren't being shown. So if I right click here and select manage columns, I get this little dialog that says, oh, here's, selected columns that are actually visible. And if I select some other columns, you'll see them magically appear. So there are many columns in this list that I don't actually have shown up. So I can select them all, deselect them all, or go back and pick the ones that I actually care about. Hit OK, and that's what I'll see in my table. So we've added this 3-button ellipsis here to make it a little more obvious that there's functionality behind this table, but still it's sometimes not entirely obvious. So if I right click or click on the 3-button ellipsis, another new feature that we've just added, and you're going to see a layout and a little bit of feature. I don't think this has even been deployed yet out to production, but it will go out there soon, so it'll be available to the public. But this allows you to export this table data to a CSV file. So this interface, it's got a lot going on here, but essentially you're going to see the columns here on the left that are hidden currently, the columns here on the right that are visible, and this is by default. So you can see we have map name, owner ID, file name, maxlat, and minlat. Those show up. But here in this interface, I can choose what I actually want to export. So this is the case of I want to take this table data, export it out to a file. So I can select a particular column and move it over into this list so that it's not going to be exported. I can go back and say, give me all the columns that are visible in the table. I can tell it to give me all columns entirely, go back to just the visible ones, or I can select them individually and move them back and forth to choose which ones I want to actually export. I can change the order here, use these buttons to move columns up or down. I can actually select them and drag them. If I had multiple columns selected, that's a control click. Then I can move both columns up and down. Remove all is going to clear this out. So if I click continue, it'll say you don't have any columns to export. So you want to at least have some columns here to make sure you get some data exported. If I had selected some columns in this table when I chose to export data, so again, that was a right click up there on the column, then this option here becomes active, export selected rows, and that means only the data in these selected rows will be exported. Nothing else will be exported. Still going to be whatever columns here show up in the selected columns list. Next, I can choose what I want my separator to be for the CSV file. If I want it to be a comma, a tab, or I can specify some other character. And lastly, down here, if there's array data in my table, which in this case I don't have any, this will give you the option of whether you want that data to show up with one column per entry in the array, or if you want all of the entries in the array to be in one column. So this might be a difference if you're importing this data into Excel or into a spreadsheet, or whether you're importing it and using it in DaVinci or some other tool. That would be the reason why you would choose one or the other. So I think that's pretty much the functionality here on this panel. So it's a pretty standard export that would give you a CSV file. Now I'm going to share really quickly another couple of, let's see. I'm going to just share my screen, and I'm going to show you the difference between exporting an array as a column or as different columns. So you might have to zoom in on this. I think I can zoom in on this. Sure. So I'm zooming in here, and you can see that I had this column, nadir temperature profile, and this would be the first column, the second column, et cetera, all the way over here. And you can see as I got to the fifth column, there's different data here. These values are different. Now, if I had selected, so this is the option to select to export the array as one column per value in the array. And this over here is what it would look like if I said export it as one column. So you have one column called nadir temperature profile, and all these values in double quotes and comma separated show up as one column, and it ends a little bit over there, but this is just a screenshot that you could then import into Excel and then explode it however you choose to. But that's basically it. I'll reshare JMARS in case there's any questions. And I think that's basically it. Anybody have any questions?
Ken, if any of the formats that you showed, are they that export can be done in, are they all importable into Excel?
These are basically getting exported as just text values, so it should all be there. It is possible that, so like, for example, if you were to export the shape layer that we were looking at and you were to export those colors, it is going to be, this color is going to show up as like a java.awt.color, and it's going to have the RGB values that go with it. So it might not be that useful for a user bringing it into Excel, but it will just be text value that comes with it. So it'll still import. It just might not be incredibly useful because it's kind of a Java object.
I see. Thank you.
You could get the RGB values from it though, so there's still some value there for something like color.
Is it clear from view of the table which cell can be edited by double clicking, which is read only? Once you were going through table and their functionality.
I don't know. I was really focusing on the functionality here behind these menus, but you're talking about in the table cells here, whether you can actually edit them. Scott, do you know how that's?
It's very ranges across what part of JMARS you're looking at. Most of the tables in JMARS are not editable because we're like the custom map showing you like, here's all your custom maps and all the data associated with it. Stamp layers, you can't edit, like that. Shape layer is probably, shape layer and crater counting are probably the two that I can think of that are editable. In which case, I think almost all of these are editable. So
Yeah, that's nice because the color table shows palette, which prompts me I can maybe see a palette by clicking on it.
Yep.
Yeah, and then what I feel is, so a single click here brings up this color, color option here, and here a double click seems to actually select it. So it's a little bit, it's a little bit different per column, but so a double click there brings up since this is a text field, brings up or a numeric field, brings up an entry that I can then enter the value, but I have to double click to get into like edit mode. And I do think the one other thing that I wanted to show that I don't think I demonstrated is just this click and drag, and I think you can do this on both all types of tables in JMARS, but basically you can click and drag to increase the width of the column. Get this little arrow cursor. Any other questions? Paul? All right. I think that's it.
all right, good job, Ken. Thanks for demonstrating that.